Have you ever wondered what could lead everyday peasants to rise up against their king and kingdom? In the 14th century, a spark ignited the tinderbox of discontent, leading to the infamous Peasants Revolt of 1381. This wasn't a simple squabble. It was a full-blown revolution led by Wat Tyler, a man of the people, against the unpopular King Richard II and the influential religious leader, John Ball. Let's dive into the depths of this historical event and uncover the true story of the Peasants' Revolt. Imagine living in a world of serfdom, where your life and work are controlled by the whims of the nobility. 14th century England was a cauldron of social and economic discontent. The majority of the population, the peasants, were shackled by the chains of serfdom, their lives dictated by the few, the nobility. This was a time when the gap between the rich and the poor was a chasm, with the common folk bearing the brunt of the hardship. Adding fuel to the fire was the imposition of the poll tax, a flat tax that was the same for everyone, regardless of their wealth or status. This was particularly burdensome for the peasants, who were already struggling to make ends meet. The poll tax was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, igniting the simmering resentment among the peasants. Enter Wat Tyler, a charismatic leader who gave voice to the pent-up frustrations of the peasants. Tyler was not of noble birth, but a commoner, a man of the people. He understood their struggles, their pain, their anger. He rallied the peasants, inspiring them with his fiery speeches and his unyielding resolve. Under Tyler's leadership, the peasants began to organize, their discontent transforming into a potent force for change. They were no longer willing to quietly accept the injustices foisted upon them by the nobility. They were ready to fight, to demand their rights, to demand a fair and just society. Wat Tyler was the spark that ignited the flame of the Peasants' Revolt. He was the man who dared to stand up to the nobility, the man who dared to dream of a better world for his fellow peasants. His leadership was instrumental in transforming the peasants from a disorganized mass of discontented individuals into a formidable force that would shake the foundations of the kingdom. As the pressure mounted, the stage was set for a revolt that would rock the kingdom. The seeds of discontent had been sown, and the harvest would be a revolt that would forever change the course of English history. What would drive the peasants to storm the iconic Tower of London? This question echoes through the annals of history, sounding louder as we delve deeper into the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. The Tower, a symbol of royal power and authority, became a target for the wrath of the common folk. But why? The answer lies in the figure of John Ball, a charismatic priest who had been imprisoned within the tower's formidable walls. Ball was a visionary, an advocate for social equality who dared to question the status quo. His sermons were like sparks, igniting the kindling of discontent among the peasantry. However, his radical ideas were not well received by the ruling elite. They viewed Ball as a threat, a heretic who must be silenced, so they imprisoned him in the Tower of London, which was more than a prison. It was a statement, a demonstration of power, a clear message to the rebels. This is what happens when you challenge the authority. But the ruling elite underestimated the resolve of the peasants. Far from being cowed, they were outraged. The imprisonment of John Ball was the final straw that broke the camel's back. It galvanized the rebels, gave them a cause to rally around. They decided to storm the tower, free Ball, and bring their oppressors to justice. And so they did. The peasants stormed the Tower of London, a feat that was unthinkable until it actually happened. They freed Ball, but their victory was short-lived. The ruling elite, in a desperate bid to regain control, executed Ball, turning him into a martyr for the cause. In their grief and rage, the peasants murdered the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Lord Chancellor, both of whom were hiding in the tower. The storming of the tower was a clear signal. The peasants would no longer accept their lot in silence. They were ready to fight for their rights, whatever the cost. And for the ruling elite, it was a wake-up call that they could no longer ignore. A sea of commoners marching on the capital, a sight that sent shockwaves through the kingdom. Picture this, a river of humanity, the peasants of England rising from their fields and hovels, their faces set with determination. They were the backbone of the land, yet they had been pushed too far. Now, they were on the move, a tide of discontent that flowed towards the heart of power, London. The city's elite watched in disbelief as this human tide swelled, their secure world suddenly threatened. The walls of their grand houses and the gates of their palaces, which had once seemed so impenetrable, now felt fragile and vulnerable. The March of the Peasants was more than just a physical journey. It was a symbolic one, a potent demonstration of their collective strength and their growing dissatisfaction. The ruling class was left reeling, their grip on power shaken. London had never seen anything like it, and it was only the beginning. When peasant leader Wat Tyler met King Richard II at Smithfield, history was made. This was the moment when the simmering tensions of the Peasants' Revolt of 1381 would come to a head. The stakes were high. On one side was Wat Tyler, a blacksmith turned rebel leader, representing a diverse coalition of peasants, labourers and artisans. On the other side was the young King Richard II, a monarch whose unpopular policies had sparked the mass uprising. The meeting at Smithfield was a gamble for both parties. For Wat Tyler, it was a chance to voice the grievances of the oppressed and seek redress. For Richard, it was an opportunity to quell the uprising without further violence. Yet the encounter did not go as planned. A dispute broke out, and in a shocking twist, the Mayor of London, William Walworth, struck Wat Tyler, who was later killed by royal soldiers. This unexpected turn of events led to a tense standoff. The vast rebel army, now leaderless, was on the brink of launching an all-out assault. But Richard, showing a surprising level of maturity and political acumen for a 14-year-old king, managed to defuse the situation. He rode forward and addressed the rebels, promising them pardons and reforms. This bold move worked. The rebels, placated by the king's words, dispersed and returned to their homes. However, Richard's promises were empty. The pardons were largely unfulfilled, and the proposed reforms never materialized. The king's actions at Smithfield were a ruse, a tactical ploy to dissolve the rebel forces and restore order. The meeting at Smithfield marked a turning point in the revolt, but its impact was far from over. The death of Wat Tyler, the dispersal of the rebels, and the king's broken promises all added fuel to the fire of discontent. The events at Smithfield did not end the Peasants' Revolt. Instead, they transformed it, giving rise to a new phase of resistance and rebellion that would have a lasting impact on English society. The Peasants' Revolt might have ended, but its echoes can still be heard today. This uprising was more than just a rebellion. It was an embodiment of the deep-seated discontent that had been simmering within the peasant society. It brought to the surface the frustrations of the common folk, their anger at the ruling elite, and their thirst for change. The revolt was a searing indictment of the social and economic disparities of the time. It was a stark reminder that even the most marginalized voices could not be silenced forever. The peasants, who were considered the lowest rung of society, had risen and challenged the authority of the ruling elite. And although the rebellion was ultimately suppressed, it left an indelible mark on the psyche of the nation. The Peasants' Revolt of 1381 served as a catalyst for change. It forced the ruling class to acknowledge the grievances of the peasants. The revolt may not have achieved all its objectives, but it did sow the seeds of reform. In the years that followed, there were notable changes in the laws and policies governing the peasants. The ruling class could no longer ignore the voice of the common folk. Furthermore, the revolt had a profound impact on the way history was chronicled. It was one of the first major events in English history that was extensively documented from the perspective of the commoners. This marked a significant shift in the narrative of history, which until then had been largely dominated by the accounts of the elite. The events of 1381 served as a stark reminder to the ruling class of the power of the masses. It underscored the fact that no authority, no matter how powerful, could suppress the will of the people indefinitely. The Peasants' Revolt laid the foundation for the democratic principles that would eventually shape the future of England. The Peasants' Revolt of 1381, a pivotal moment in history that forever changed the face of England. Intrigued by the Peasants' Revolt and want to learn more about history's pivotal moments? Well, there's plenty more where that came from. Subscribe to our channel and let's continue to unearth the stories that shaped our world. And for an even deeper dive, don't forget the ebook waiting for you in the description. It's packed with riveting details and insights, sure to satisfy your historical curiosity. Journey through history and never miss a moment, the moment. Remember, history isn't just facts and dates, it's the story of us.